What's going on YouTube? This is Rivo back at the bench, and today I've got another knife cut or carry. This time looking at the Honey Badger. Now all of the Honey Badger knives are just really called Honey Badgers, but they all differ in size, steel, color, and blade shape. So this is the Honey Badger small Wharncleaver 8CR13 MOV in whatever color this is, brown, flat dark earth, whatever it's called. It's kind of a confusing naming system, and it's kind of frustrating when you're looking at this online because it feels like this knife, which is the small version in a Wharncleaver, should probably be called something different, like a different model name than the large drop point, right? Because they feel like two totally different knives. But either way, this review is for the Honey Badger small Wharncleaver 8CR13 MOV in whatever color this is. Couple quick notes. So I have wanted to review this knife for a long time. Honey Badger, when they came out, I think it was a couple years ago, I thought they were super interesting. I mean, one, just because of the Honey Badger thing, the honeycomb pattern. So I know this sounds silly, but I'm a sucker for honey stuff. I love honey. I think the honeycomb pattern is really sweet. Maybe that's because the Hornets are nearby, and so I'm a big Hornets fan, but also I just think the geometry of the honeycomb pattern is really sweet and typically very practical. So I thought that was kind of cool. And then I have recently been thinking that I kind of want to get back to my roots in some of the gear purchases and reviews that I do. Just getting back a little bit more to the budget stuff, which is, you know, that's where everybody starts. I'm no different. And there's just something kind of neat about a $20, $30 knife, and there's some joy there. So I've been wanting to review some more of the budget gear, and so it made me think about the Honey Badger, and so I picked one of these up. So that's kind of why I'm reviewing it, and that is why I'm reviewing the 8CR13 MOV version and not the D2 version. So they do offer, I think, all of their knives in both 8CR and in D2. I really wanted to do the 8CR version just because, again, it's like the ultimate budget knife, and that's what the person in the store is going to be picking up, right? They're going to be grabbing an 8CR knife typically, and that's where we like to come in and educate on steels and all that. But hey, this is where we all start, and I thought it'd be kind of fun just to grab a really basic budget line knife. So this is the 8CR version, and it's the small version. And yeah, and I already mentioned that you're looking at a lot of different options. So you've got everything from different types of blade designs or blade styles. So there's a drop point, there's like at least four different types of blade styles you can get. They call this the Wharncleaver, so it's kind of a warny and a cleaver shaped blade, kind of interesting. But yeah, all right, so let me, I've been rambling here already. Let me get to some size comparisons, and then we will get into the review. All right, so we have the mini sheepdog here, which I wanted to bring out because it's kind of that cleaver blade as well. And then figured I would just show the Dozier, as I often do, another great budget knife. And then this one, I had to reach way back into the knife box for this one, and just with the thought about kind of getting back to roots and where we all started, I pulled this one out. A lot of people are gonna make fun of it, but we got the Kershaw Skyline. You can mock it all you want. I still love this knife. The action is terrible. I ground the blade edge away like crazy early on and really marred it up, so it needs a lot of work. But there's something really sentimental and nostalgic about the Skyline, and I think it's a neat knife. So I don't know, I thought that was a kind of a fun one to bring back for this review. All right, with that out of the way, let's get into the likes of the Honey Badger. Okay, so first of all, the thing that drew me to the knife is something I still really like. I like the gimmicky look quite a bit. So you have here this honeycomb pattern on this, I don't know what they call it, but this plastic kind of scale here. And then you have this really aggressive looking blade on the Wharncleaver version. The drop point's a little bit more basic. But there's just something cool with all of this jimping here that you see there, and on the back spine there, on that spacer, and a little bit there too. But there's just something cool about the Honey Badger on there. Honey Badger don't care. I actually always think of Tyrann Mathieu if you're a college football fan, or I guess an NFL fan now, but I remember him when he was at LSU and all of that. He was nicknamed Honey Badger, so that's what I always think of. But anyway, there's just something really cool about the look of this, and I kind of like the kind of gimmicky look. So definitely a pro there. Lots of options, I would say. In general, that's a pro for this knife. I probably should have grabbed the drop point, but I really like cleavers typically, so I wanted to check this one out. Visually, I don't like this one as much as the drop point, so if I do pick up a large, it'll probably be the DP there. But I think it is a good thing that they have a lot of different options and they offer various ranges of steel. It makes it a little bit more accessible to people, but I do wish that they would name those a little bit better. The size is another tremendous positive for me. This is close to the perfect kind of EDC knife for me. I'm trying to think, what have I have? Well, I'm actually carrying in my pocket the PM2 for the first time probably in a year. But typically I have been carrying knives that are a little bit smaller. So small Sebenza, the Benchmade bug out, things like that. And so I think the small size of this is really, really good. The blade, I think, generally is pretty good. I think it's a pretty useful blade. I don't think it's too thin. That was my initial thought, was that it was a little bit too thin maybe, but I don't really think it is. You have a pretty stout spine there. I do worry about this this tip right here, but I do think that this is generally a pretty utilitarian knife blade for EDC, and so I like the Wharncleaver. I really dislike this. I don't know what you call this, not recurve, but whatever this is, I think it's ugly and doesn't really serve much of a use and actually hinders, and I'll talk about that in a second. But besides that, I really like it. I will say also, and this is totally to be expected because it's a really cheap knife, but if you run your hand on the blade, you can feel some kind of ripple in the blade steel on this side here. Obviously, you won't be able to see that in the video, but I can feel that with my finger. So not perfect, but not really expecting it to be. Other things I like, I mentioned this before, but I think the jimping is really, really well done. You know, you've got it here, and I always love when you carry between the blade and the scales there. So it's not overdone, very similar to the honeycomb pattern where it's very comfortable, but it does give you a little bit extra texture. And I like that when you're holding this, your hand's kind of coming around on that jimping there. So I think that is really, really well done. Additionally, the pocket clip. So I think these Chinese knife makers have figured out that we like deep carry fold over pocket clips. And so they just take this same one, either with this cutout here or just a straight one with the same nickel plated type finish, and they just put it on all knives now. So Vivi's have a lot of these. I'm trying to think of other brands, but this pocket clip is on everything now, it seems, and that's fine. It's a fine pocket clip. It works very well. I would much rather have this than some other things I could think of. Pretty boring, and it would be nice to see something different, but for a $25 knife, I think it's a great pocket clip to have. Finally, this one's kind of and I guess this will merge us into the things I don't like because I like it and I don't like it. This fake Spidey hole thing that looks like kind of like maybe a thumbprint or a thumb there. I do think it's nice to slow roll the knife open, and so for that reason, I like it over a thumb stud. Obviously, I like the Spidey hole, so I think it works really, really well. Well, we'll get to my issues with it in just a minute. So let's talk a little bit about my dislikes with the small Wharncleaver. So number one, the ergonomics. When you look at this knife, it looks like it would be very comfortable in the hand, and perhaps the large version would. This one is not at all, and it was super disappointing. The minute I pick this knife up, I am reminded that it is a small knife, and it is not comfortable in any way. First of all, my thumb goes right to that horn right there. It does not fall in the jimping unless I kind of scoot back, at which point it feels super, super awkward, or I want to be like way up here, which doesn't feel right either. Additionally, my hands feel super cramped, and I have this spot where the pocket clip goes just digging right in there. And overall, I just cannot get a comfortable grip on the knife unless I do kind of like a pinch grip like that. So the size is perfect. The looks, the design, all look very, very good until you actually pick it up. And for my hands, at least, I want to be either over here or something else. It's just not a comfortable knife to me. So that was primarily the first drawback to the knife. Very, very noticeable in the hands, at least to me. If you have one, be very interested to hear what you think, because ergonomics are one of those things. It's so subjective to the person holding the knife, but to me, very, very uncomfortable. Second downside or dislike to me is the action. Now, the knife can be opened a couple different ways. It's obviously a flipper. I do have to use a little bit of wrist to get that out. I mean, it's possible to not do that, but unless I'm really thinking about it, I do fail to deploy quite often. Of course, I'm not doing it now on camera because I'm thinking about it, but I do that quite a bit. The detent is a little bit harder than I would like, but I still do fail it. However, you can open it with the thumb stud. You can do kind of the Spidey flick like that. I'm sure you can open it like that. I don't find either of those things to be super practical and kind of difficult to do. But if you slow roll the knife like that, it's very, very good. Now, the opening is fine, although not perfect. The closing one is pretty gritty. It's pretty rough, not very smooth at all. I can feel that. It just feels like it's grinding up against the liner. But the big issue I have with this is the crazy lock stick. So when I go to disengage this liner lock, I mean, that is like, let's see if you can hear it. It is like nails on a chalkboard to me. It feels bad, it sounds bad. It's really, really not fun. And if there is no other reminder that this is a $25 knife, it is when you go to disengage it. It just sounds bad and it has not worn it at all, which kind of stinks. So really not a fan of the action, really not a fan of the ergos. And finally, like a little nitpick, and this may be nothing, but I also noticed on this knife, this thing collects dust inside more than any other knife I have ever owned. I don't know what they're using as the lubricant or like the for corrosion protection or whatever on those inside liners. But I don't know if you can see that. I have not carried this knife a whole lot, and it has picked up dust like crazy. So not a huge deal. Obviously, you can take it down and clean it out, but I did notice that, so I want to mention it. So what do I think about the small Wharncleaver? This one's a cut for me, which I'm pretty bummed by, because I was excited about this knife and I like a lot of aspects of it. It does really get me excited for checking out the large, because I feel like between the ergonomics and the action being the two things that drive me nuts, the large version could solve one, if not both of those issues. The ergonomics, hopefully, just being a larger knife, but even the action, I've noticed with heavier blades can be a lot better. So maybe some hope there. I think I'll probably try the drop point version next time. But this one for me is gonna be a cut. So that is it for today. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.